Who are the characters behind science? This is Science Behind the Glass, illuminating the human side.
In this podcast, we unveil the human side of laboratories and science. Scientists share personal experiences and we discuss their meanings from different perspectives and fields of research.
Hello, I'm Linda Hernandez. Welcome back to our podcast, Science Behind the Glass, illuminating the human side. Here, we delve into the human side of scientists and researchers. We interview individuals directly involved in the scientific and academic field, discussing the paradigm of academia and science through their human experience.
Hi Linda, it's nice to be back. Today we have a very interesting episode. We'll be talking to graduate students who are often overlooked as scientists or researchers by universities and institutions. However, they have spent several years pursuing scientific careers and engaging in research process. We'll hear about their personal experiences and insights gained through their graduate students.
We have interviewed students from different parts of the world, some studying locally, while others have to migrate from different parts to complete their postgraduate studies. We will listen to their responses to a series of questions we have prepared for them and discuss the contrasts and commonalities that come with being a graduate student in various circumstances.
That's right. Let's dive into the interviews.
Hello. Thank you for being here. What is your full name?
My academic name, I guess, is Jaden Edgar.
Mi nombre es Oscar Humberto Alvarado Zanabria.
Mi nombre es Amanda Sofía Arana González.
Bueno, mi nombre es María José Brito Vera.
What is your postgraduate program and why did you choose it?
And at the moment, I'm doing my PhD in medical and molecular science, mainly learning about the medicine itself, about the drugs, and also specific compound that we can find from different sources of natural products that we can use to treat different kind of diseases.
Doing a PhD in James Cook University in Cairns. My research is focused on looking at how infrastructure development facilitates land colonization and massive land cover change and the impacts, mostly on it from the environmental side, but also there is some scope to extend that to socio-economic side of things. And the reason I chose this was because I love nature. I'm big into nature conservation.
Actualmente estoy cursando el doctorado en Ciencias Agrarias en la Universidad Nacional de Colombia y el énfasis es en fisiología de cultivos. Bueno, siempre me gusta cómo seguir estudiando e investigar, solucionar problemas relacionados con plantas y con la parte agrícola.
I am currently studying the doctorate in agricultural science at the National University of Colombia and the emphasis is in crop physiology. There are two reasons. One is because I always like to continue studying and researching, and how to solve problems related to plants and the agricultural part always seems interesting to me. And the other one is more academic versus job, a work issue. Sometimes when you don't have a job, it is easier to get scholarships than to get a job. So in this case, it was a series of events that a scholarship came out and a project came out, and I liked the topic.
Estoy cursando la maestría en el posgrado de Ciencias Biológicas de la UNAM y lo elegí porque me parecía un posgrado bueno para el campo que quería ejercer, que es genética de la conservación.
I'm pursuing a master's degree in the Biological Sciences postgraduate program at the National University of Mexico. And I chose it because it seems like a suitable program for the field I wanted to work in, which is conservation genetics.
Bueno, mi programa de posgrado es en oceanografía biológica. Salí de la maestría, dije que no iba a estudiar un doctorado. Después de un tiempo, me di cuenta que realmente es lo que me gusta. La academia, estudiar, investigación.
My postgraduate program is in biological oceanography. I completed my master's degree, and after a while, I didn't want to continue doing a PhD. But then I realized that this is what I really love, the academy, research. Are you a domestic or international student? Do you move from your city or home country to do your postgraduate studies?
I'm from Indonesia. I went to Australia in 2020 to start my PhD journey here. I've been living here nearly 4 years.
So I am originally from Townsville in North Queensland. I moved about 400 kilometers, but in North Queensland, that's like the distance between like any town that is more than 10,000 people.
Yo vivo en Tunja. Tunja es relativamente cerca a Bogotá. Está 2 horas, 2 horas y media. Entonces digamos que es nacional, pero generalmente me desplazo entre Tunja y Bogotá.
The part of taking classes is taken in Bogota, but I live in Tunja. Tunja is relatively close. Bogota is 2 hours away from there, but I generally travel between these two places.
No, afortunadamente vivo en la Ciudad de México, donde está el campus central de la UNAM, entonces no tuve que mudarme y eso para mí fue bastante bueno.
Fortunately, I live in Mexico City, where the main campus of UNAM is located, so I didn't have to move, and that was quite beneficial for me.
Es en Puerto Rico. Sí, yo soy, como dije, ecuatoriana de Guayaquil.
Yes, I moved to Puerto Rico to start my PhD, but I'm originally from Guayaquil, Ecuador.
It is English your first language, and did you have to learn a second language to study your postgraduate program?
My mother tongue is actually Japanese, not Japanese, Japanese. But then I also speak Indonesian, which is the national language in my home country. I'm still learning how to speak English properly. So my English is not perfect.
Sí, digamos que no recuerdo el nivel que exigen de inglés, pero tanto cuando uno ingresa al doctorado como cuando sale, te piden un nivel de inglés. Entonces, realmente cuando yo entré, yo ya tenía un nivel, digamos, demostrable, entonces con eso es suficiente. Entonces, como tal, sí hay un requisito durante el doctorado, que es ese de tener como una certificación del inglés, pero en el desarrollo del doctorado no es que sea algo obligatorio.
Yes, I don't remember the level of English they require, but both when you enter the doctorate and when you leave, they ask for a level of English. So actually when I enter, I already have a demonstrable level, a B2, that is considered enough. So as such, yes, it's a requirement during the doctorate, but in the development of the doctorate, it is not something that is mandatory. But how to say it, you are supposed to know enough in the language for academic purposes, but it's not as limiting as when you are in another country that you have to know to survive.
Pues principalmente no había ningún examen ahí de inglés, pero eso fue una sorpresa. Todas mis clases han sido en inglés. Todas las clases que le llaman medulares, que son las oceanografía química, física biológica y geológica, han sido en inglés.
When I moved to Puerto Rico to start my PhD, there weren't any English exams there. But what a surprise! All of my classes have been in English. The core classes, which includes oceanography, chemistry, physics, etc. And that has been my main stressor.
Can you share some of the struggles you have faced during your postgraduate studies?
You know, as a non-native speaker, studying in a country where English is the main language spoken by people, so we kind of have to do twice harder attempt when we're doing something. That's the second barrier, because it's totally different from my own culture. My family, they are all in Indonesia, and I was separated for around 3 years during the COVID. And that's the biggest challenge for me as a mother, especially.
Challenge for me was probably my own creation, in that I didn't really plan a lot, and then I kind of just packed everything I had into my car and drove up here with no prearranged accommodation or job. But I guess like the main sort of struggles were money. We get a postgrad stipend in Australia, but it's pretty low. We recently got it increased a bit, but previously it was like 2/3 of the minimum wage or something. And with like the cost of living increases that have been going on lately, especially like massive increases in rent and things like that, for a lot of people it was barely enough to get by. For me, for a while, I was actually losing money every paycheck.
Generalmente acá los que he visto es más relacionados como con el desarrollo de mi proyecto doctoral y la parte económica. Entonces acá cuando yo decidí empezar mi doctorado, como te comentaba, pasó un proyecto, pero ese proyecto pues los fondos se los da, haz de cuenta, una institución pública, en este caso MinCiencias, a una universidad a través del ICETEX. Pero entre problemas burocráticos y prácticamente lentitud de ambas instituciones han girado los fondos. Hasta ahora se van a girar. Pues realmente yo no he podido empezar mi proyecto doctoral como tal debido a eso. Entonces ese es como uno de los grandes limitantes. El otro es mi beca, es realmente una beca parcial. Al mismo tiempo tengo que de alguna forma trabajar y estar estar estudiando proyecto. Y con la parte económica,
Limitations are related to the economic part. When I decided to start my doctorate, a project was already accepted, but that project funds are provided by a public institution. In this case, incidents between the university and this institution and bureaucratic problems have slowed things down, and they haven't deposited the funds yet. So I already haven't been able to start my doctoral project as such because of that. That's one of the big limitations. The other one is that my scholarship is really a partial scholarship. I have to somehow work and study at the same time.
Creo que tengo varios como problemas con organizarme, con poder organizarme. También a veces es muy difícil para mí concentrarme y hacer como mis tareas con tiempo. Entonces eso ha representado un grave problema para mí y para mis tareas en el posgrado.
Yes, I think I have several challenges, such as issues with organization and being able to stay organized. Sometimes it is very difficult for me to concentrate and complete my task on time. So this has been a significant problem for both me and my responsibilities in the postgraduate program.
Porque ese ha sido mi principal estresor, es el inglés, porque otras barreras podrían ser, por ejemplo, ¿no? La lectura, que es bastante, pero son cosas que tú te puedes ir organizando. Ha sido como un poquito fuerte en el sentido que, chuta, yo digo, lo sé, pero no lo puedo escribir bien. Pero sí, esa sería la barrera más grande.
As I mentioned before, English is my main barrier. Other barriers could include, for example, the extensive reading, but that's not a big challenge. I can organize myself.
How these challenges shape you as a scientist and as a person?
I've learned from this experience about the perseverance, both as a person or as a student. That's really important. And I think that will be useful for me in the future too. First thing, and the main thing for me, I don't know with other students, but for me, stay close to God is the main thing that I have to maintain. Because I feel like a peaceful life, no matter what circumstances that I'm in. When I close to God, I feel peace and also get more strength to cope with any circumstances.
Get a much better understanding of how difficult things can be for other people. I like to think that I have always had some sort of some sort of amount of empathy for how difficult life can be for other people through no fault or choice of their own. Many of the international students here who don't have any real sort of support, and if they come from a country that is much poorer than Australia, they cannot get any support from family back home, even if they, needed it. And many of the students also have to help support family back home. So to see the sort of stress that the low wage can have for people who are doing their PhD during the day and they might have to work for like Uber or Uber Eats or something at night, that has been sort of like a massive, just a real like reinforcement of sort of my understanding of how things can be for other people. And my partner also, who is a brilliant academic and an amazing person, but has struggled a lot recently with chronic illness, and just seeing how like the health system doesn't really provide a lot of support for that. There's not really that much that can be done. So she kind of just battles through dealing with everything herself.
Digamos, de los pros es que uno ya conoce que las cosas no van a salir tal cual como uno cree, entonces le toca a uno estar preparado siempre e ir poco a poco, seguir insistiendo, pero ser consciente, como prever que a veces no se puede dar, entonces tener en cuenta eso para con anticipación tener otro trabajo, prepararse psicológicamente para saber que las cosas no van a salir al mismo tiempo. Digamos que lo forma uno más con un poco de paciencia y hacer un poco más recursivo.
Comes to know that things are not going to turn out as you believe. So it is up to you to be prepared and go little by little, keep insisting, but be aware and anticipate these situations. Take that into account in order to have another job in advance or prepare oneself psychologically to know that the things are not going to be on time. Let's say that form you with a little bit more patience and a little more resourcefulness when it comes to obtain resources, for example.
Tener espacios donde pueda trabajar con amigos o con compañeros. Siento que muchas veces estas faltas de organización o falta de ánimo para poder hacer mis tareas con tiempo se pueden solucionar mucho haciendo comunidad. Y creo que eso es algo que para mí ha sido un camino muy bonito y también me ha hecho generar muchos lazos con otras personas dentro de la comunidad científica.
Well, I believe that having a space where I can work with friends or colleagues has been incredibly helpful. I feel that many times issues with organization or lack of motivation to complete tasks on time can be addressed by building a sense of community. For me, it has been a beautiful journey and it has also helped me to forge many connections with other individuals within the scientific community.
Strategies do you use to manage stress and prevent burnout?
I love music. I play some musical instrument, so it's kind of making me feel more relaxed. Many kinds of music, but especially the traditional one, traditional songs. And also I feel grateful because here in Cairns, we have Cairns Indonesian Australian Association. What I felt was when I meet people from my home country, it's kind of meeting new family.
Don't really have any good strategies for dealing with stress and burnout. I don't have a lot of free time. I don't have any spare money, so it makes it a bit difficult to take any breaks or holidays or anything like that. I like to read a lot, but most of the things I read are potentially even more stressful than my PhD. So I can say things that you should do to avoid burnout, but I can't really, it's more of a situation of do as I say, not as I do.
Bueno, hay veces que es más fácil implementarlas, hay otras veces que es más difícil porque uno está demasiado como involucrado o inmerso en las actividades que uno está haciendo. Entonces, cuando tengo la suficiente cabeza fría para pensarlo y decir, ok, me estoy cansando y tampoco me está rindiendo, ya sea laboral o académicamente, les digo, es hora de hacer ejercicio, salir a tomarme algo con mis amigos, decir, no voy a hacer nada durante hoy y solo no hacer nada literalmente o pasar tiempo con la familia. Pero a veces, pues es difícil, es como cuando uno está con esa tensión de tiempos, de cosas por entregar o de actividades, pues que es cuando uno más está estresado, como ser consciente de que eso lo desgasta a uno física y mentalmente y como de tomar una pausa.
Easier to implement them. There are other times when it's more difficult because you are too involved or immersed in the activities you are doing. So when I have enough cool head to think about it and I say, okay, I'm getting tired and it's not working out, whether it's academically or in my work. Then I say it's time to exercise or go out and have a drinks with my friend or maybe do nothing today or spend time with my family. But sometimes it's difficult when you are under a deadline or with pending things or activities to show result. That's when you are most stressed. Being aware that this wears you out physically and mentally and take that break, sometimes it's not as easy as I would like to be.
Algo que me ayuda mucho es hacer ejercicio, meditar, procurar dormir muy bien y nunca dejar de lado mi sueño y mi salud mental. También tomar terapia es algo que me ayuda mucho.
Well, I think something that helps me a lot is exercising, meditating, ensuring I get enough sleep, and never ever neglecting my mental health. Also, going to well-being counselor is something that helps me a lot.
Lo he tratado y lo he logrado en muchas ocasiones, desconectarme, bañarme, dormir, descansar y hacer cosas distintas a estar frente a la pantalla, a un televisor. Por ejemplo, amo tomar fotos, me gusta salir a tomar fotografías, estar un rato en la playa.
I have tried and I have succeeded on many occasions. Disconnecting, taking a shower, sleeping, resting, and doing things other than being in front of the screen or a television. For example, I love taking photos. I enjoy going out to take pictures and spending time at the beach.
During your postgraduate studies, have you lived with your family member or your partner?
Yes, in addition to the Cairns Indonesian Australian Association, me and my Christian friends, we have a monthly fellowship, and that helps me a lot because we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And so whenever we have problems, we will share our problems and they will support us in prayer. And that's really strengthened me.
I live with my partner. We've been together 5 years and we've lived together most of that time. So it has really helped to be able to, share my life with my partner. She has been a massive help because we feel the same a lot about a lot of political things. So it's, a great relief to be able to go.
Yo viajo entre Bogotá y Tunja, entonces cuando estoy en Bogotá generalmente es porque tengo allá un trabajo, llamémoslo así, de medio tiempo y a veces tengo clases, ya sea clases propias o apoyando una materia, que es lo que me exige la beca parcial. Entonces cuando estoy allá estoy relativamente solo, comparto con uno que otro amigo de vez en cuando, pero en los fines de semana estoy viajando a Tunja, entonces en Tunja sí estoy familia, mamá, papá, hermano, novia.
I travel between Bogota and Tunja, so when I am in Bogota, it is generally because I have to work or I have classes, either my own classes or a subject I teach, which is what the scholarship requires of me. So when I am there, I am relatively alone, so I share with one or another friend from time to time, but on the weekends, almost every weekend, I am traveling to Tunja to visit my family, my mom, dad, brother, girlfriend, all of them.
Sí, pues por suerte estoy con toda mi familia en la Ciudad de México, pero siento que mi mamá ha sido un gran apoyo para mí porque tenemos una muy buena relación y me ha ayudado muchísimo a, no sé, como en temas de transporte, en temas de ánimos, en ser como una persona con quien puedo platicar siempre.
Yes, fortunately, I am with my entire family in Mexico City, but I feel that my mom has been a great support for me. We have a very good relationship, and she has helped me a lot with things like transportation and keeping up my spirits. She is someone I can always talk to, which is fantastic.
Yo recién tengo un mes que me cambié con mi novio. Tenemos nuestros espacios, ¿no? Como que hasta esta hora se trabaja, luego, claro, si hay que estudiar o se tienen tareas pendientes, pues se las ocupa, pero no en la noche yo ya estoy dormida porque me levanto ahora a 5:30 de la mañana porque tengo rutina para hacer ejercicio, entonces como que más me doy el tiempo de estar bien, estar físicamente bien, estar saludable en todo, ¿no? Físico, mental, estar tranquilo, y eso pienso que necesitamos todos.
I recently moved in with my boyfriend. We have our spaces, like until a certain time we are working. Then, of course, if there's a studying or pending task, we take care of those, but not at night. I also have a routine. I try to get up 5:30 a.m. to do exercise, and I try to take time to be well, physically and mentally healthy. I believe we all need that sense of tranquility and overall well-being, not just physically, but mentally as well.
How is your relationship with your tutors? Can you rely on them for academic and personal matters?
It's a blessing when God led me to meet them, to have them as my supervisor. It's not a coincidence. It's a blessing, really a blessing for me. They help me a lot, especially when I have to learn something new, and they teach me, guide me how to learn those new things.
I don't really see my supervisors that much, but I am someone who's like very self-motivated and I always have more questions. So, I can get completely absorbed in my work and I don't even remember that I haven't talked to my supervisor in a month or something. But my supervisors are very helpful when I need help. Like my main supervisor is pretty much it's me and him. It's our project essentially. So he's very helpful to get ideas about what direction to go, how to communicate the work, who to talk to get help on particular issues.
Digamos que afortunadamente yo creo en mi forma y lo que me han dicho, como que ellos me llevan en buen concepto, entonces me dan mucho espacio, o sea, como Oscar, usted hágale, acá vamos supervisando, vamos revisando, no me presionan tampoco mucho y más como que, ok, pues usted va a su ritmo, digamos que también, pues eso es, no soy tanto las personas que me guste que me estén pidiendo qué hacer, sino ya como que sé qué hacer y me gusta es más pedir consejo, entonces como que ellos aceptan esa forma y trabajamos relativamente bien. Uno, digamos, me aporta en una parte más logística y el otro más en esa parte académica de conocimiento, entonces como que es un buen balance y me la llevo bien con ambos. Sé que sí, no hay esa relación tan íntima que en otros casos se puede dar cuando tú te sientes un poco más solo y esa persona pues compartes mucho más con ella.
I mean, You can do it however you want. Here we are supervising, we are reviewing. They don't pressure me much and I can go at my own pace. I'm not so much of that people that like who ask what to do, but rather I already know what to do and I like it. It's more about asking for advice, so they accept that way of work and it's relatively okay. One contributes to me in a more logistical part and the other one more in that academic part of knowledge. We get along well, but we are not like friends. But I know that in other cases, students may feel a little bit more alone and that person can share a lot more with their tutors. It also depends so much on the person.
Mi relación con mi tutora es muy buena. Creo que tenemos una relación muy transparente y me siento muy bien con eso porque tengo la confianza de decir siempre mis necesidades y ser escuchada. Entonces, para mí eso es un paso gigante en los estudios de posgrado porque antes he tenido relaciones complicadas y siento que esa es una limitante grande. Y con mi comité tutoral, aunque son personas bastante ocupadas y siento que no están tan al pendiente o como muy tras de mí, siempre puedo consultarles y siempre son como personas muy abiertas a pesar de estar ocupados.
My relationship with my advisor is very good. Well, I think I have a very transparent relationship and I feel very comfortable with that because I have the confidence to always express my needs and be heard. So for me, that's a huge step in graduate studies because I have had complicated relationships before and I feel that it is a significant limitation. With an advisory committee, even though they are quite busy and I feel they may not be constantly monitoring or closely following my progress, I can always consult with them and they are always very open individuals.
Mi profesor con el que estoy ahora trabajando, yo lo conozco ya hace más de 10 años. Me explicó el doctorado y todo y pues dije acá. Me voy a Puerto Rico. Y sí, he tenido varias como que momentos que he necesitado de su ayuda en cosas muy personales, más por salud. Y pues siempre he estado ahí.
My current advisor, who I have known for over 10 years, explained the topic of the doctoral program to me, and I decided to go to Puerto Rico. I had several moments where I needed his help with very personal matters, especially regarding my health, and he has always been there for me.
How do you see the professional perspectives after finishing your postgraduate program?
I have to mention here that I'm actually a lecturer at one of the Indonesian state universities. I'm doing my study here as part of my job. So as soon as I finish my study, I will return to Indonesia and then continue my job as a lecturer.
I've constantly tossed up whether or not I want to stay in academia or because I would like my work to have some sort of tangible on the ground benefits. So I'm very interested in trying to get into a more practical sort of side of things where I can actually make things happen and be involved in that. But also I have seen a lot of the constraints, NGOs and different conservation groups and government groups, and how it can be absolutely impossible to get things done.
Yo lo veo un poco complejo porque realmente acá en el país, para ese perfil de doctor, yo he visto que solo hay como dos escenarios. Uno es ser docente universitario y el otro es ser investigador. Pero los que son investigadores, pues es en algunas instituciones particulares, Agrosabias, en Icafés, en Ipalma. Entonces, muchas veces lo que yo he notado es que, por lo menos en Agrosavia, los investigadores que ya están allá, es mucho más fácil que continúen con esa labor investigativa y que les tengan en cuenta su doctorado. Mientras que cuando uno es externo, ingresar es un poco más difícil. A nivel docente también uno ve bastante competencia. Entonces, como hay varios doctores, pues y son tan pocos los escenarios, uno ve a veces para un mismo cargo, pues personas muy bien preparadas que digamos podrían fácilmente ganarse eso.
I see it a little bit complex because generally here in the country for that doctoral profile, I have seen that there are only two scenarios. One is to be a university professor and the other one is to be a researcher. But those who are researchers are in some private institutions. So many times what I have noticed is that at least for some private institutions, the researchers who are already there, they get it much easier for them to continue with their research and to have taken their doctorate into account. Whereas when you are external trying to get a position in those kind of institutions, it is more difficult. In addition to these positions, there are the teaching level, but there is a lot of competition. Since there are several doctors, there are so few positions that sometimes many candidates are running for, and because there are very well prepared people who could easily win those positions.
Creo que es un campo que cada vez está creciendo más, por ejemplo, esto de genética de la conservación y sobre todo en el aspecto de microbioma, pero aún así no estoy tan enterada como de qué va a pasar después de que termine el posgrado, entonces es algo que tengo que empezar a investigar.
I believe it's a field that is continuously expanding. For example, in the realm of genetics and conservation, especially in the aspects of microbiota. But even so, I'm not well informed about what will happen after I complete the postgraduate program. So it is something that I have to start researching.
Como doctorado, todavía, no sé si pasa en Colombia, pero en Ecuador es como que te ven, tiene doctorado, como que no le podemos pagar lo que hay que pagarle a un doctor. Sí, prácticamente está sobrecalificado para él. Y verdad, suele pasar y mucho más en las universidades públicas que en las privadas.
In Ecuador, working in public institutions is a little bit more complicated than in private ones. And if you have a PhD, you are considered overqualified. It's as if having a PhD, the perception is that they can pay you what someone with that level of education should be paid.
Can you give some advice for aspiring scientists? Would you recommend your postgraduate program?
I think I will recommend this program to people that I know, especially in my faculty or in my university, because so far, the research that have been done in my university, especially related to medicine, they only limited to using the crude extract from plants, especially because of the limitation that we have in our facilities. So that's the best thing that we could do at the moment.
I don't know if I could recommend JCU specifically at the moment, because there has been a lot of changes in the last few years, and a lot of them not necessarily have improved the situation for postdocs or PhDs. And here, I love doing research, so the PhD has been great for me. I've loved the experience. I would recommend a PhD to people if they love research. It's not something that you should get into lightly, because it can be a massive pain.
También depende, o sea, tanto de la persona como del área y lo que espera. Entonces, por ejemplo, lo mío, que es un doctorado, pues eso es muy el área investigativa. Entonces hay personas que no saben es como qué hacer y dicen, vamos a hacer un doctorado o vamos a hacer una maestría. Pero a veces no consideran eso, que investigación pues tiene un enfoque diferente a solo laboral, sí, como la parte laboral, comercial, en fin, sino es investigativo. O sea, el campo, entre comillas, se reduce o es específico a unas empresas particulares. Entonces, en mi caso, lo recomiendo si eres investigador y trabajas en una institución de investigación, es recomendable. O sea, yo sé que enriquecería mucho la actividad como investigador en esas instituciones. Si uno no lo es, y más en Colombia, mejor no. O sea, no es necesario hacer un doctorado. Digamos que las personas cuando van a hacer un posgrado no conocen esas diferencias ni el enfoque de cada uno y se frustran porque dicen, no, yo pensé que la maestría es diferente, porque no tienen en cuenta que están haciendo una investigación cuando debieron haber hecho una de profundización.
Yes, for example, mine is a doctorate in the research area. Sometimes there are people who don't know what to do and starts a doctorate or a master's degree, but sometimes they don't consider that research has a specific focus, different from just work or business. If you are a researcher and work in a research institution, it is recommended. In other words, it is not necessary to do a doctorate. It is not necessary the doctorate or even the master's degree. But if you want to do a master's degree or a graduate program, you can consider programs that improve skills as a professional, not necessarily with research. So many times when people start postgraduate degrees, they don't know those differences or the approach of each one of them. So they get frustrated. They said, nah, I thought that the master's degree was different, because they don't take into account that they are doing research when they should have done other type of programs.
Sí, sin duda recomendaría mi programa de posgrado. Creo que es un posgrado en el que tienes muchas opciones de materias muy valiosas, y creo que también es un posgrado que puede adaptarse fácilmente a las necesidades y los intereses de cualquier investigación. Entonces sí las recomendaría.
Yes, I could definitely recommend my postgraduate program. I think it is a program that offers a wide variety of billable courses, and I also believe it can easily adapt to the needs and interests of any research, so I would recommend it.
Si te gusta la oceanografía, pues tienes que darlo, porque como dije, te dan física, oceanografía biológica, química y geológica. Para biólogos, para químicos o geólogos, yo creo que cualquiera podría entrar, porque claro, no solo es oceanografía biológica, eso es lo que yo estoy estudiando, porque en general es el doctorado en oceanografía y pues te eligen cualquiera de las líneas, elígenla. Es un buen programa.
If you like oceanography, well, you have to love it because, as I mentioned, in oceanography you encounter physics, biology, biological oceanography, chemistry, and geology for biology. I believe anyone could get into the program because, of course, it is not only biological oceanography. That is the one I'm studying. In general, it's a PhD in oceanography and you can choose from any of these lines. But like in anything, if you enjoy it, if you feel that oceanography is for you, yeah, this is a good program.
Tell us a little bit more about your research. What is about? And do you think that your research will have an impact in society or contribute to your field?
My research is about herbal medicine for wound healing, both the normal wound and for diabetic wound. So far, we have already got really good results. And at the moment, we are still doing an experiment in mice that hopefully will get good results. So that will be useful or bring advantage for people, not only to cure the normal wound, but especially for diabetic wound that you probably know it's really hard to heal.
Yeah, so I have a lot of hope that my research will contribute to conservation and conservation research. So I guess to give like the really quick sort of summary, I am trying to build better models of predicting the impacts of large road development projects. So things like the BR highways through the Amazon and things like this, that everyone knows that these roads were sort of built in and then there was massive land colonization that resulted in like mountains of deforestation and invasion of indigenous territories and all these sorts of things. At the moment, the models to sort of predict the impacts of these projects are pretty basic. They're either like, just very rough estimates or they are very refined estimates of only a certain like percentage of the impacts. So what I'm trying to do is build much more robust models.
Pero mi proyecto, el que estoy esperando que empiece por la financiación, es, en pocas palabras, probar unas variedades de arveja, someter unas variedades de arveja a estrés hídrico y verificar si esas variedades de arveja, entre comillas, recuerdan el estrés hídrico. Entonces, haz de cuenta que si yo tengo una planta, le pongo un estrés hídrico leve cuando la planta es joven y luego le pongo un estrés hídrico un poco más grave o severo cuando la planta es adulta. Y mi idea es mirar si esa planta que fue sometida a un estrés hídrico cuando era joven, recuerda cuando ella ya es adulta y tolera un poco ese estrés hídrico. Acá digamos que esa parte investigativa y sería lo ideal en cada uno de los proyectos que se hacen, estuviera unida a una parte de extensión, lo que llamamos extensión agrícola acá en Colombia, que es llevar ese conocimiento al campo. En el proyecto hay un pequeño acercamiento, como una reunión con asociaciones y un documento a nivel de alcaldía, o sea, de un lenguaje menos científico. Y se espera, o sea, siempre cuando uno, sobre todo en esta parte agrícola, pues uno espera que lo que uno hace tenga un impacto en el campo. Acá en el país lo que uno ve es que hay ciencia, pero que no se aplica, no llega al campo.
In short, it is to test some pea varieties, test their response to the water stress, and verify if those pea varieties remember water stress. I put mild water stress on it when the plant is young, and then I put a little more serious water stress on it. I test the plant as an adult, and the idea is to see if that plant that was subject to the stress when it was young remember when it is already an adult and tolerate that stress. The ideal would be that the research in agriculture gets extended to the field. What we call agricultural extension here in Colombia is bringing that knowledge to the crops and farmers. In the project that I am doing, there is a small approach with meetings with associations and a document at the regional level. That is bring the knowledge to less scientific language. And it is expected, especially in that agricultural part, that what I do has an impact on the field. Here in the country, generally, there is science, but it is not applied. It doesn't reach the field.
Creo que trabajar con microbioma de primates no humanos es un paso muy importante para hacer conservación, sobre todo porque en México estos monos son muy traficados y creo que el tener un poco más de herramientas para ayudar a su conservación de forma adecuada puede ser un gran paso importante.
Well, I think working with non-human primate microbiota is a significant step towards conservation, especially considering that these monkeys are heavily trafficked in Mexico. Having more tools to aid in their conservation properly could be a crucial step forward in addressing this issue.
Mira, yo estoy ahora con los ensamblajes de peces, que son comunidades de peces en realidad en los arrecifes de coral. Esa conexión que pasa en los peces de una etapa juvenil a otra etapa de la historia de vida hasta que sean adultos y pasan pues a veces hasta al océano abierto. Y esa conexión es tan importante, o sea, principalmente para la pesquería, ya aparte de turismo y todo, para la pesquería, porque pues si no cuidamos lo que está dentro de este pequeño, que parece muy pequeño, que es entre el arrecife, manglar y las praderas, pues de verdad vamos a tener, o ya se está viendo, que hay una baja de las poblaciones de peces que son de importancia pesquera.
I'm working with fish assemblages, which are communities of fish in coral reefs. My research aims to understand what happens to a fish at different stages of life. This connection is crucial, especially for fisheries and tourism. If we don't take care of what's within the reefs, mangroves, and seagrasses, there will be a decline in the population. Well, currently we are observing this decline of the populations, and this will affect everybody, and economically important fish species and other fish communities as well. We heard about a wide variety of postgraduate projects that our guests are working on. For example, some of them are working on biomedical research, conservation science with the geospatial analysis, agricultural improvement, and studies on populations and wildlife communities. Although each field is different, all the students face similar challenges. What do you think, Danny?
Yes, that's right. Those of us in the field of science share many challenges in terms of, for example, intellectual demands and commitments to produce results. For example, the publications or the papers that we need to present. It might be related to how scientists are evaluated by institutions and founding entities.
Additionally, pursuing a postgraduate degree demands a lot of time, and universities often do not provide financial assistance that allows proper survival, or at least live comfortably. Moreover, psychological services to cope with the burdens are rarely offered. In my case, I was 35,000 kilometers away from home. And as Jason mentioned, the cost of living in Australia is very high. I had to send money to support my family, and unfortunately, I had an accident. Even though I have a medical insurance as an international student, coverage for the international students was minimal, and I had to cover surgery expenses with the support of friends.
Yeah, that's true. There are many cases like that. While I was doing my master's, the scholarship support was limited, and the university's services for postgraduate students were scarce. However, the institution I am in now has various psychological support programs, which, despite everything, fall short for the volume of students who need them. Here in Mexico, there's also a relative solid state scholarship program that allows you to live without too much economic pressure. But yes, at the end of the day, students often persevere out of pure passion and commitment to science.
On the other hand, we heard how students' experiences vary depending on whether they are domestic or if they are international students, or if they have to move far away from their place of origin.
Yeah, that's another topic. I think you and I can relate a lot to that, having to move from Colombia to pursue our respective doctorate. In my case, I feel that one gets used to constantly moving in search of opportunities, but I do think that this is a burden assumed almost as necessary when you are trying to build a career in academia, and it involves heavy things like uprooting and leaving behind your personal support network.
Personally, the advice I would give to people considering postgraduate studies, whether national or international, is to ensure good communication with their mentor. It is like a 4 or 5 year marriage. Communication and respect between both parties are essential. The chances one may need to make in the thesis difficulties or the crisis experience are overcome with the help of mentors. In my case, this was essential. 90% of the success of this postgraduate is due to this. Personally, I had the opportunity to study in Finland, but my communication with mentors was pretty poor, so I decided to resign from the PhD opportunity. It is essential to understand that resigning and finding a path that fulfills you personally and professionally is better than live 4 or 5 years of misery. This is a reflect in the responses of our guests. For some, having a family or having their partners replaces the emotional support, but for others, their mentors become part of their family, as it was my case.
Yes, also from the responses of the guests, I found it interesting how everyone has very different reasons for choosing their programs and very different perspectives after completing the postgraduate program. This shows us that there are many reasons to start postgraduate studies and all are equally valid. Often, we are led to believe that the only valid reason for pursuing postgraduate studies is that you are a super intellectual person who is crazy about science. We also see that everyone has very different idea about how to continue on the path of science after completing their studies, which is great because it seems like we are stepping a bit out of the box to think about different ways to apply our knowledge and skills in science.
However, pursuing a postgraduate degree does not guarantee getting a job. In fact, without intending to discourage anyone, the competition is significant and job opportunities are not abundant. Therefore, it is also good to pursue an applied postgraduate degree, or at very least one that can be employed in the industry or working together with the industry.
And to conclude, we want to thank our interviewees again and the audience for tuning in to this episode of our podcast, Science Behind the Glass, Illuminating the Human Side. This episode was inspired by the articles Graduate Students, Aspirations and Anxieties, and Exploring Students' Perspectives, How Graduate Students in a Life Science Department Define Success. We will leave this reference to these materials in the episode description. We'll meet again in 15 days with the next episode, featuring more stories from the human side of science. This podcast is self-funded, self-edited by its host. Find us on YouTube, Spotify, and our official website. Follow us on our social media on X, Facebook, and Instagram. The original music by our colleague and friend Bernardo Aguila.